session. As you know, at 8 p.m. every day, we have conversations about matters we believe are important in the country. Today, we must talk about the Delhi police's charge sheet and moves and arrests they have made to do with the Delhi riots. Now, we know that a little about a week ago, the Delhi police had filed a supplementary charge sheet in which it was initially said that Mr. Yogendra Yadav, Ms. Jayati Ghosh, was a professor with JNU, Sitaram Yechuri had in fact been named. After protests on the internet and widespread opinion about it, the police then clarified that they hadn't been named as accused, but in fact those being interrogated in jail in the matter of this case had suggested they received encouragement from these individuals. Also, in the last 24 hours, the Delhi police has made an arrest, this time of student activist Umar Khalid, who has been charged with a very stringent UAPA. Now, according to the police, he had done a few things. He had made speeches and he had riled up people, and he had, in fact, had meetings with individuals to organize protests. Now, there are many questions to be asked in this matter about why the UAPA is being brought in a matter of hate speech, and if protesting is in fact illegal in our country now. Joining me right now is Mr. Yogendra Yadav, who is a farmer activist, a citizen activist, and a very strong voice. Also one of the individuals whom the Delhi police has sort of named and not named at the same time. Mr. Yadav, good evening, and thank you for joining me here to have this conversation with us. First of all, I want to talk to you about the case being brought against Umar Khalid. We understand, based on what the police has said, that he basically, and I'll read it out, it says, with ill motive, poisoned the mind of the people with hate speech, and as a result, the riot took place. Shouldn't this actually be, shouldn't this attract the law against hate speech and not UAPA, which is effectively an anti-terror law? Do you believe the police is overreaching here?
Faye, this is beyond ridiculous and very sad. You mentioned some of the charge sheet that was brought against people like me and Sitaram Yechuri, but that was merely a warning bell. What has happened in the case of Umar Khalid must concern every Indian. A, because he has been arrested. B, because he's been arrested under UAPA. Now, that is a law meant to prevent attacks on India's sovereignty and integrity. That is what the law is about, to be used in the most dreadful situations, to be used for things for which there is no ordinary law available. Now, what are the charges? A, hate speech. I find it laughable because I happen to have heard some of the speeches. We were together on the stage. These were speeches about Ambedkar, about Gandhi, about minorities, about democracy. And if that is hate speech, why doesn't Delhi police play out some of these things and not the edited excerpts that were run by the BJP IT cell? Because as you know, those were proven to be false. That when you actually look at the bigger chunk from that excerpt, it shows him talking about against violence. That's number one. Number two, if the charge is that he was plotting with people to encourage this movement, protest, of course, yes, he was. Of course, I was. Of course, many of us were. Yes, we were, we believe in it today, and we will do it tomorrow. That is to say, if there is a law which is against the spirit of this country, against the constitution of this country, it is not merely my right, it is my duty to protest against it. That is what Umar was doing. Now, the question is, what is the link with violence? Mind you, this is about violence, for which also there are normal laws. But please show the link of Umar Khalid with violence. Faye, we forget the fact that Umar Khalid has been under police protection from 2018 onwards, which is to say, wherever he goes, a police person walks with him. And presumably, Delhi police is intelligent enough to put him under electronic surveillance itself. So just imagine, I mean, do you find it credible at all? Here is a person under police's nose, under its surveillance all the time. And he manages to do such a grand conspiracy, which results in the death of 50 plus people. Delhi police said that Umar Khalid met some people on 8th of January and decided to have a protest when Mr. Trump comes. Now, the funny thing is that even the government of India did not know that Mr. Trump was coming by 8th of January. They got to know it much later. I mean, such is the ridiculous nature of these charges. The only point of doing all that, Faye, is that Delhi police knows that its case is so weak that it would not stand normal scrutiny. Therefore, they want to make trial into a punishment. And under UAPA, trial itself is punishment. That is what is being done. And that is why it is so dreadful. The message it sends to everyone who believes in Indian constitution, to democracy, is forget about all that. If you dissent, this is what you get.
Mr. Yadav, just to pick up a couple of things that you pointed out, the UAPA law, of course, was amended a couple of years ago to make it even more stringent. One of the features is that there is no bail, and the burden of proof is on the accused, which means that Umar Khalid will now have to prove that he didn't do what the police is saying he did.
Absolutely.
Again, this then makes the process for him far more complicated. Is this what you're referring to as punishment?
Absolutely. The law has been amended several times, and we must note that it was amended in 2004, 2008, 2019. So all the governments are guilty in that. And basically what it means is that at the stage of bail, you have to prove, normally when you ask for bail, you simply have to prove that I'm not going to intimidate the witnesses, I'm not going to disrupt anything, and I'm not going to run away. But in UAPA, you have to prove at the stage of bail that the case is false, after which there should actually be no trial once you've managed to prove it. So it is such a stringent thing. Therefore, chances of your obtaining bail are so low. And if you want to see what happens under UAPA, just look at what is happening to Akhil Gogoi in Assam. He has been cleared in one case after another. But they every time first they invoked NSA, now they are invoking UAPA. And he simply cannot get bail for having done nothing. This is what Delhi police wants. And that's why I'm saying this trial is a punishment by itself.
Do you believe that this is, you did say, of course, that this is action against dissent, but particularly there seems to be action against students dissenting. I mean, at the end of the day, these are young people. There were two young ladies who were taken into custody a couple of months ago. One of them has received bail, but Devangana and Natasha, based on their interrogation, all of this has then been stitched together. What is your reaction right now to the government saying those people who organized the CAA protest, who got people together, who brought speakers in to speak to these people, are the ones who caused the riot?
So that's the name of the game. The name of the game is that Delhi, the riots take place. Riots take place, which is a huge embarrassment, should be an embarrassment for any government. The minister initially says these were spontaneous, just to get himself off it. Then after 10 days, BJP IT cells floats a theory. Minister changes his opinion and gives a statement in the parliament that organizations like United Against Hate were involved and there was a deep conspiracy. Then he institutes this investigation, which is duly discovering that what their boss said was right. That's basically what's happening. And in the process, a large number of innocent students, young persons, activists have been apprehended, arrested, tortured in custody. And I can testify to all of that. They are being threatened, tortured, all of this is happening in order to make a point which the Home Minister has already made in the parliament. Umar Khalid's arrest should serve as a window to what is happening to so many other activist young persons. You mentioned Natasha and Devangana. Now, Devangana gets a bail, but she cannot come out of jail because they have invoked UAPA in her case as well. So the name of this, so the day they are getting a bail, they are put under another case, and UAPA is the final surety bond that you cannot step out of the jail. Now, is that the reason why these laws were made? This is a complete misuse of laws, and not just misuse of laws. If you look at the larger attempt at criminalizing a protest movement, it's an attempt to basically say, if you protest in a peaceful, democratic, legal, constitutional way, we would see you as a criminal. We would punish you. Now, it's not merely unfair to those who were involved in all this. Just think of its implications for democracy. In a democracy, you basically put a lid on every protest and say, no democratic normal protests are allowed. What do you think would happen in such a country? What are the long-term implications? As an Indian, we must worry about these things, especially when it concerns the country's largest minority. So basically, nation building is such a delicate process. And this moment saw thousands, if not lakhs of Muslim women come out with tricolor, with the constitution of this country, with Gandhi, with Ambedkar. What is the message that you've given to those women today? That you were fools to do so in this country. Is that the message this country wants to give to its largest minority? This is so shameful. This is so pathetic. And this is so troublesome for everyone who loves India, everyone who takes pride in the idea of India.
Mr. Yadav, the supplementary charge sheet that has been filed that names you, names Professor Jayati Ghosh, names Mr. Yechuri, says basically the professors instructed the students to go to any extent to organize protests and to malign the image of the government. That actually brings us to a point of, does the Delhi police believe maligning the image of the government is against the law? Or does the Delhi police believe organizing a protest to malign the image of the government is against the law? Are any of these things against our laws?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a preliminary question of what these statements are. Remember, these are disclosures. What is a police disclosure? Police disclosure is police's own record of what someone else told them. Remember, Natasha and Devangana have refused to sign these statements, which are being cited by police, which are being played by the television channels. So, number one, these are not authenticated statements. I cannot believe Jayati Ghosh or Apurvanand saying, go to any extent and do these things. Apurvanand is one of the sanest voices in this country. Do remember, Rahul Roy is the person who went to Delhi High Court at midnight to just secure a safe passage for ambulance to hospitals. These are the people we are talking about. And finally, of course, the question remains, is organizing dissent a crime? Is maligning this government a crime? I think we are forgetting basics of democracy, that dissent is a right in democracy, that actually democracies survive and flourish on expression of dissent. So as I keep saying, in this country, there has been what can only be described as a democracy capture. Democracy has been captured by using instruments which appear to be democratic, which is election, electoral majorities. What we are witnessing is a democracy capture, and sadly, a professional organization like Delhi Police is simply playing out a script, a very poor script, written by the IT cell of BJP. This, if it happens, this would be the second big blot on the record of Delhi Police. First was 1984. And this, I'm afraid, is turning out to be a second big blot on the uniform of Delhi Police.
Mr. Yadav, the other thing that most of these people who are named, including yourself, have in common is that you have been critical of government policy aside of CA and RC. Mr. Jayati Ghosh, for example, has been very vocal and critical about government economic policy. You yourself have been critical about farm policy. Mr. Yechuri has been in opposition for as long as any of us can remember. He's been fairly critical as well. Is it possible, or do you believe that this is a reaction to the criticism on other policies as well?
Could well be. We can't rule that out. At the moment, everything seems to be linked to CAA. I think the protest against CAA hurt the government very badly. They had not anticipated, and they had not anticipated people other than Muslims being involved in this, young people of this country being involved in it. Remember those gatherings at India Gate? This was not one community, one generation, everyone came. I think that shook the government. And this is primarily a revenge against that. You dare do that again. That's the message.
Is it also messaging right now going out to young people saying that you don't want to get mixed up with protests anymore. You go to a protest, you're going to be in trouble. Parents are going to tell young students not to go to protests, not to get themselves into trouble. Is that perhaps a fallout of one of these cases?
Goes without saying, all the reportings that we have been reading for the last 2-3 months, this is the most obvious conclusion you would get. This is the most obvious thing the government is trying to convey, that if this can happen to Umar Khalid, think of yourself. over the last 2-3 months, dozens of young people have been interrogated, investigated by Delhi police. And all kinds of threats have been used. All kinds of pressure has been exerted on them. All kinds of extra legal, extra constitutional measures have been adopted by Delhi police. One day, all of this would come out in public as to what Delhi police had done. So, of course, the attempt is to send that kind of message. But, there's something about youth. They're like spring. The more you press them, the more they come back, they spring back. And that is something we have witnessed over the years across countries. The more you try and suppress the youth, they find a way to spring back. And that, I think, is likely to happen. And Umar Khalid, in many ways, expresses the spirit of that young India. A very idealist person. The strange image that you have of Umar Khalid from media is very different from the human being that Umar Khalid is. Very down to earth, very sane, extremely moderate in his thought, extremely diligent and careful about saying what he does. And someone who deeply believes in democracy, and someone who has very consistently and carefully kept away from any communal force, whether Hindu or Muslim or any other communal force. This really is the kind of Indians I would like to see. This is the kind of young leadership this country deserves. But probably by putting him under jail and making him a national figure, Modi government may have unwittingly contributed to making someone into a national leader, someone who truly deserves to be a national leader.
Mr. Yadav, you were also at JNU when the university was attacked, and there was violence that played out, not just against the students, but also against faculty members. There has been no arrest being made in that case. There's been no arrest made against those people who fired shots on the streets of Delhi. No arrest being made against, what is arguably hate speech from leaders within government. Does this show that the Delhi police is completely right now blind to one side of what's going on, or is completely incapable of doing their job?
I really feel bad about officers and personnel of Delhi police. I can't believe that all of them are either fools or incompetent or dishonest, but the kind of orders they receive. Now, JNU incident took place on 5th of January. It is more than 9 months now. Delhi police said, please, if you have any evidence, give it to me, give it to us. I actually sent them a written evidence of everything, including Facebook account of those who had attacked me with their photographs and videos. I'm yet to receive a response from Delhi police. I'm yet to receive an acknowledgement of the fact that I gave it, let alone arrest, let alone investigation. I mean, anyone in Delhi police would cringe at the thought of something like this. Clearly, they are being directed from the top. Clearly, when they scan all the footage of Umar Khalid to see where he may have used one expression that can be interpreted to mean inciting, and they don't look at Kapil Mishra's videos, which are floating in there, which he has been posting himself, then I'm sure every honest officer, everyone with conscience would cringe at the thought of it, would feel bad about it. As I said, it seems that Delhi police is putting this second very big blot on its own record when they, let alone arrest, so there is this lady in the middle of Delhi riots who's giving that famous thing saying, Mar jao ya mar do, naming communities. Has she been arrested? Is there an FIR? There is the Union Minister Anurag Thakur calling people for slogan Goli Maro, and actually at that very site, bullets are fired 2 days later. Any arrest? Any FIR? Any investigation? Now, this is exactly the stuff that we had seen in 1984. Delhi police watches when Delhi burns, and then there's whitewashing of everything and everyone, including the record of Delhi police itself. Let's not forget that there are so many videos of Delhi police personnel itself being involved in stone throwing, in breaking CCTV, in killing a young man. No identification so far after 6 months. What Delhi police has done in this case is that they've gone one step beyond 1984. In 1984, they simply ensured that everyone who did it got scot-free. This time, they're turning around and blaming the victims, blaming those who defended peace and arresting them, putting them behind bars. So Delhi police marches on.
Mr. Yadav, I also want to ask you a couple of things about the parliament session that begins today, if I may. You have, of course, been a farmer activist for a very long time now, bringing forward farmer issues. Farmers are now protesting across the country against the 3 ordinances that the government has brought in. For the benefit of our audience, it's the Farmers Produce Trade Commerce Ordinance. This basically limits the extent of influence of the APMCs on the sale of products from farmers. The second one is the Farmer Empowerment Agreement. This brings in more power to contract farming for big corporates and essential commodities, which is being modified. So regulations can be imposed on the prices of products if they either double or if there are what the government calls extraordinary circumstances. If you could explain to our audience, please, in simple words, why these 3 ordinances are bothering our farmers and what the impact of these ordinances is likely to be if they become law.
Simple word is the critical thing here, because while reading the name of these ordinances, we tend to fumble because we don't know what it's all about. So I'll give you very simple names for this. One is the APMC Bypass Act. Basically, what it does is that it says currently farmers, at least in some parts, most parts of the country, sell their produce in a sarkari mandi. This ordinance says you can set up private mandis outside these mandis. The second is essentially a permission to hoard act. That stockist can stock unlimited amount of things. The previous conditions will not apply. And the third is permission for contractual farming by companies act. That's the third act. What is the problem? The problem in the APMC Act is, and farmers all over the country are really very worried about it, that this act would mean that in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, APMC will start collapsing. Why would they collapse? Because within APMC, there is a certain tax that you have to pay, 4 to 6%. If, say, Mr. Adani or Mr. Ambani sets up a private mandi just outside the APMC, which would attract 0 tax, why would anyone go to Sarkari APMC? APMCs will collapse. And once APMCs collapse, that is the only place where farmers can hope to get remunerative prices, because that is the only place where government purchase, government's own acquisition takes place. So the fear is this, that in the next 3, 4, 5 years, this would mean gradual withdrawal of the remunerative price policy that the government has given to the farmers. And the fears are not unfounded, because over the last 6 years, the government has taken so many steps to ensure that this MSP headache is over. So that's the one fear. On the Hoarding Act, the real fear is that once stockists are allowed to hoard large quantities of agriculture produce, they can play with the price.
Yes.
Reduce the prices when farmers bring their crop, and enhance it when farmers are exhausted with their own share. This is a standard market play. On contract farming, although this is a long-term thing, the fear is that it would be very unequal contract. So a farmer signing a 25-page document written in Hindi, English or something, where a company has a slew of lawyers to defend, and the farmer would not even begin to understand what that contract was. Basically, put together, all these are moves towards corporatization of Indian agriculture. Now, corporatization of agriculture in the US is one thing. It has one kind of consequences. But in a country where average holding is about 2 acres, in a country where most of the farmers are small, where they badly need a mandi somehow to give them decent prices, this could mean, this could be catastrophic for the farmers. That's why I was there today in front of the parliament protesting, because today all the 3 bills were being introduced. These have already been introduced as ordinances, but an ordinance lapses. Once the parliament starts its session, within 6 months it can lapse. So the government is now introducing it. And we are at the moment saying something very, very simple. Please consult us. Please
Right.
consult the
Because,
farmers.
that was going to be my next question. We've had conversations in the past about the fact that farmers do believe that there is a hegemony within the APMC system, where traders within the APMC bully the farmers in simple terms on, on what they will buy, and on days when the farmers don't agree, they don't buy from them at all. And the farmer has no choice to take it anywhere else because they're mandated to go to the APMC. Isn't this one way to come out of that? If someone can buy from me outside the gate of the APMC, doesn't that give me as a farmer a second option?
There are all kinds of problems with APMC. So APMC is a roof that leaks very badly. But the answer is not to remove the roof altogether. The answer is to improve that roof. Places where APMC system does not exist, for example, Bihar. Bihar APMCs were done away in 2006. How free are the farmers of Bihar today? All over the country, paddy sells for about 16 to 1700 rupees a quintal. In Bihar, it sells 900 to 1000 rupees a quintal because there are no APMCs. So farmers in this country do not want to do away with APMCs. They want APMCs. They want these official Sarkari mandis because that's the only place where they can have some say. So they want improvement. They want it to be fine-tuned. They want a lot of petty local politics to go away. A lot of modification, but you repair your roof. You don't do away with your roof. That's what's happening.
In the contract farming, again, this has been something government has mentioned many times, will bring a great deal of business into agriculture, because companies will be able to procure directly from farmers. Do you just see the process of drawing up the contracts would be unfair, or is there more concern about it? Is it a step in the right direction that could use fixing?
Look, to be very frank, I actually don't expect much action on that in any case, because I don't see companies rushing to do contract with farmers right away, because that's way far beyond. Do remember that a lot of contract farming is already taking place in the country in specific instances. So if you have a factory for ketchup, you do enter into contract with farmers to supply your tomatoes and so on and so forth. The experience hasn't been very great for the farmers, but these things do exist. And there is I would imagine at least 1/3 of Indian agriculture is under informal contract agriculture. Theka, this is bataidari. These are very standard informal arrangements. This is not about those informal arrangements. These are about formal contractual arrangements with farmers. I think one has to look at the experience and decide. To my mind, this is a gesture at the moment, which is unlikely to result into something very concrete. And the protections provided to the farmer, even in this gesture as of now, are not sufficient.
Mr. Yadav, my last question, I am aware of the fact that we're running out of time, but my question to you is this: the poor of our country are effectively farmers, and what we called migrant labor during the lockdown was a new term that people came up with, which we didn't have before this. Now, incidentally, the government today, written in Parliament, has submitted an answer saying that basically, look, the government has no record of any migrant labor death that took place during the lockdown based on the pandemic. But they have said that there were about 1 crore laborers who went back to their village during that lockdown. And I'll come back to what pressure that puts on farming, because effectively these people will then do kheti with the rest of their families. But my first question to you is, should the government have done a better job of collecting information? And isn't
would have been honest if they said that they have no record of migrant labor, period. That would have been a more honest statement. The fact is, the government keeps no record whatsoever of the existence of these migrant labor, not only in cities. Remember, most of the migrant laborers are migrating within the state, and they are migrating from within the district itself. The government of India sadly keeps no account or no record of that. In fact, it's the other way around. And when the government said, these many people will be provided ration, my first question that day probably to you was, how would the government of India do it? They don't have any record at all of who the migrant labor are. But the government could have had record of two things. Number one, the government could and did have record of their transition, because there was a lockdown. all the transport arrangements had to be made by police and home department. Therefore, the government had business to keep the records. Those records were kept, and they were kept at both ends, at the end of the state from where they departed, at the end where they arrived, because of the strict lockdown protocols at that time. If you could have those records, what prevented you from recording deaths? Recording every single death in this country is mandatory. So obviously every single death has been recorded at some police thana or another. All you need to do is to simply say, please put one additional category under that. And if this work could be done by some amateurs, the researchers, there was a website that they ran, great website, please show this to your viewers. They kept a record based on newspaper articles, based on news reports in several languages, of every single death that was at least reported in a newspaper. Couldn't the government of India do a better job than what a bunch of 4 or 5 amateur scholars, researchers could do? This is such a shame.
Mr. Yadav, the other ordinance the government is moving is to modify our labor laws. Now, at a time when we know that unemployment is at its worst, arguably since independence, that we have now laborers coming back into cities looking for jobs, salaried people are losing their jobs. The only thing that protects labor are the labor laws. For the government to now be modifying those labor laws, should we be concerned about what the details of that modifications could be?
It's a bit like the APMC, Faye. Our labor laws are very defective. Our labor laws are extremely bureaucratic. Our labor laws manage to do both. Our labor laws manage to annoy and trouble the employer without giving any protection to the employee. So yes, we have very poor labor laws. But my simple question is, why now have a debate? What is it? I mean, and in the middle of lockdown, in the middle of such a high unemployment, what is your top priority? Is your top priority to ensure a easy hire and fire? Is your top priority to ensure that people can be employed for more than 8 hours? Similarly, for all the agricultural laws, my question was, give me one single reason why you needed to bring these laws during coronavirus and lockdown. Similarly, give me one reason why labor laws need to be reformed, diluted, transformed at this moment. The simple and sad answer is, there is no connect, but there is a deep connect. The connect is that at this moment, the country is politically sleepy. No political activity is taking place. All protests can be stopped. And this is a wonderful moment in the dark, through the back door, to push these legislations. And this is what economists have been openly talking about. A crisis is an opportunity. Push these laws. No one would notice. No one would oppose. At least no one would be able to resist it so much that the government actually faces a problem. So this is stealth. This is dacoity. And this must be prevented. We should have an honest debate in this country about labor laws. And I personally believe that many defenders of the labor also are wrong on this issue. We need an honest conversation on labor reforms. But this is not the moment to introduce it. And this is not the way. Through an ordinance, through the back door, this is not the way to do it. This must be stopped.
Mr. Yadav, back on the 9th of August, there was an article that was published across all newspapers that headlined, and roughly the same headline, saying that the Prime Minister has transferred 17,000 crore rupees directly into the bank accounts of farmers. Incidentally, it didn't say the government has transferred. It didn't say the office has transferred. It said Modi has transferred, as if he was doing a net banking transfer as we speak. Now, my question to you is this: obviously, our farmers were in distress, as you and I have talked about, far before COVID happened to us. This has been happening since demonetization. We've had, at least according to government data, 1 crore people who've been added to that pressure, because now that farming income has to feed 1 crore extra people. Has the government done enough? Was this 17,000 crore rupees actually received by farmers? Was there enough action taken by government to aid our farmers during this period of lockdown?
Multiple problems here, Faye. Number one, as you correctly hinted, this was not the Prime Minister doing anything out of his pocket. This is the central government transferring things. Number two, and most importantly, this has nothing to do with COVID or lockdown. This is not a special grant which was being done. This was a routine installment of something that was announced towards the end of 2018. Since then, PM CARE scheme is on, PM Kisan scheme is on. This amount is transferred. So all that the government did was that it gave that routine installment, which was due in any case, with fanfare, as if this was part of any special package. Now, if I'm getting a salary, my employer comes and says, oh my God, under lockdown, you've had a terrible time, so I'm going to give you a special gift. This time you'll get your salary actually on the 1st of the month. This is what the government is doing. And funnily, the 17,000 crores actually did not reach the farmers. The government of India's own statistics now show that actually less than 9,000 crore rupees probably reach the farmers. The government has not been able to give that because the government is inefficient. All kinds of things take place. So even now, much of that money has not reached the farmers. And the first installment reached, and the next installment, which was due, has not reached. So all kinds of games are taking place there as well. The simple question is, and that's a question I wish to ask everyone about the regime. Show me 1 paisa of payment which was given to farmers over and above what they were getting in any case before March of this month, which has been given as a part of the 20 lakh crore rupees of the package announced by the finance minister. Show me 1 paisa of actual payment to farmers, not loans. Loan is not payment. 1 paisa that farmers got out of that 21 lakh crore rupees. Please show me that, which was not part of a normal things as they were happening. The answer is none. And that is the sad truth. As you rightly pointed out, the number of agriculture workers has increased. If the numbers on unemployment look somewhat less alarming, it is only because people are quitting industry, going back home, joining the 3 brothers who were already working at home and saying, okay, I'm also working in agriculture. So what we are witnessing is increase in disguised agriculture, disguised unemployment, further load on agriculture than agriculture can take, and lessening of income on agriculture. So the lovely story that is told about agriculture is completely false. Please read the article by Professor R. Ram Kumar of TISS Mumbai in Hindu 2 days ago, which actually tells you exactly what has happened to the farmers. So all the lovely tales that are being told about agriculture are factually not true.
Right, Mr. Yadav, thank you so much. I know that we have run out of time. I appreciate the time you've given us and the patience with which you've explained many of these topics to my audience. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. And thanks for focusing on the real issues of this country. Thank you.
Thank you.